Welcome to Success in Motion. Join us as we dive deep with top leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals, uncovering strategies to grow, scale, and succeed.
Welcome back to the Success in Motion podcast. I'm your host, Alex Burhoe, and today we're going to be joined by Karl Jacobi. Now, Karl was in the U.S. Army. When he got out, he then transitioned to a very successful e-commerce business. But now he's transitioned to doing his Alpha Evolution coaching, which is mainly a coaching business to help men break past their barriers. So, Karl, we appreciate you being on here, and we're looking forward to hearing your story.
Thanks, Alex. Man, I appreciate you bringing me on. It's an honor to be here. Appreciate it.
So, Karl, go ahead and just give us a quick snapshot of your business, what you do, and why you're doing it.
Yes, love to, man. And I appreciate you asking. So, really, this is impact driven. I've come, I sold my companies, and towards the tail end of my e-commerce career, if you can call it a career, I hate to call it a career. Never really viewed it as a career, but as I started to come to the end of that, I really had to ask myself, what's the purpose behind what I'm doing right now, right? And I no longer felt the burning desire to continue to do what I was doing. I just felt this calling for something more, something different. And I have been actually ignoring that for a couple of years. And honestly, towards the tail end, I was just asking for prayers of how I could get out of it. And so eventually those prayers were answered, and I exited all of my companies. The last one was acquired in March of 24. And yes, at the gentle nudge of several of my own mentors and coaches, I've been involved in coaching for numerous years, but it was more for business. Like, here's how to develop a business on the Amazon platform. Here's how to do other types of things using the Amazon platform. But it was more business oriented, steps 1, 2, 3, 4, going from 0 to 9 figures, if you wish, right? And having those conversations with my mentors are like, dude, you've got an amazing story from your past and things you've overcome from your childhood, things from the military, things, in business you've had to overcome. And you're good at speaking, you're good with people, impact people. And as I started to really go down that road, that's when it really just hit me like, yeah, this is my calling. This is what I'm made to do, is to impact as many people who I used to be, as well as the person who I am still today. I'm still evolving, to show up better as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a coach, even as well as a husband, if I didn't say that already. But that's the driving force, is to impact as many men as I possibly can, because we need it now, man. We need it now more than ever, because too many men have grown up either from a childhood where they were told they weren't going to amount to anything, either by their loved ones or by their teachers or anybody in their life, or maybe they had a string of adversities, either from failed marriages or, failed businesses or failed careers even. It's just been one adversity, and they've got this self-confidence that on the outside they may seem like they have it all, but on the inside, man, they're just crumbling, waiting for that person to come by and say, hey, dude, I believe in you. Let's go attack life and let's go become unstoppable. And show them the ropes of how to do it. So that's my focus. That's my passion.
I love it. So, with your let's say you get the ideal run with one of your clients. What does it look like taking him from the beginning, where is he at, to where do you get to take him?
That's a great question. It really boils down to what is plaguing them, right? And we use what I call the alpha method. And this alpha method was created out of my own necessity of having something out of need for how to combat my own issues and limiting beliefs and so forth, right? So I walk, basically when I get a client, we walk through this method. Okay, in the alpha method, it stands for, Green Power Military. Of course, I got to have an acronym for everything, right? But alpha actually stands for, it actually is coined a model that stands for awareness, right? A is for awareness. Um, Man, I can't even spell. See, I told you I was in the military. Um, but liberation, L for liberation. Then geez, man, talking about brain farts, but P for purpose, H for habits, and then A for action. That is within the alpha framework, if you will, when I guide clients through the process. So for example, in A, we talk about the awareness of the limiting beliefs that are plaguing you, right? We've got to identify what the monster is, otherwise we can't attack it, right? And within that awareness, we go through what are the common limiting beliefs that we struggle with. And everybody struggles with this. I've had the pleasure and honor with working with some amazing individuals and being around amazing individuals, and they all say the same common things. Man, I don't feel like I should belong here. I don't feel like fill in the blank, or I am fill in the blank, right? So in the awareness phase, I walk them, and this is probably one of the most important elements of the framework because we root down and dig into the trenches and help them understand why is they believe that they believe. Like we go through and not puncture, but clear out the fractured perspective that we have of ourselves because of things that we've had in our past, right? Like the four types of limiting beliefs that I put in a framework, one of which is identity based, which is followed by I am. I am, not good enough. I am so stupid because I made this mistake. It's that I am followed by what a lot of us don't quite understand or really underestimate is the power of the I am statement. A lot of people know that I'm very biblical and faith-based oriented. I am is the most powerful phrase that you can ever say out of your mouth. What was the phrase that God said to Moses when he was approached? I am who I am. What powerful phrase is that? So when you say, I am so stupid, the science behind it actually is your brain does not have the ability to filter out, oh, wait a minute, he was joking when he said, I am so stupid. So we need to ignore that phrase. Your brain doesn't work that way, right? So when you say I am so stupid or I am not good enough or I'm too old for this or whatever that I am followed by the negativity connotation with that, you're further, cementing that neural pathway to solidify that belief. You're feeding that belief unintentionally. A lot of us say that jokingly, but if you pay attention to these high performers, to people who are attacking and chasing it down, they are very, very intentional of how they talk, not just to themselves, but to other people, right? So that's probably one of the most critical aspects in the awareness part. And the other three are capability based, which covers, things that are like capability driven because of mistakes they've made or so forth. Like it could be finance driven. Oh, I don't feel like I'm, capable of handling money because of past money mistakes I've made. Or relationships. I don't feel like I'm capable of relationships. And out of that bucket, if you will, that's where the the imposter syndrome is really classified in that, really, where like CEOs and high level athletes and so forth, because they have this feeling that they don't deserve where they are, right? They attain that position, but deep down they feel like they don't deserve it because of whatever belief that they contain within themselves, right? And so that's like usually the imposter syndrome that we attack. And then there's like worthy base where they feel like they don't deserve that type of success. Like they've achieved some type of success, but they feel like they don't deserve it. And then the last, category of limiting beliefs is, the universal, right? Is like, for example, biblically speaking, money is the root of all evil, which it's not the root of all evil. It's the love of money is the root of all evil, right? But the universal beliefs. But once we really dig into the awareness part and help them understand that it's not them that's saying what it is that they're saying. It's actually probably their mom that told them something, or their dad, or their grandfather. That's the voice that's coming out of their mouth, not their own, right? So we've got to break that programming, break that belief in themselves, so that we can restore. Once we get out of the awareness phase, then we start to get into the fun stuff. We get into liberating. It's like, okay, let's install some tools so that you're paying more attention of how you speak and how you talk, right? We really want to put some intentional focus of wait a minute, before I say this next statement out of my mouth, I better be careful what I say because, it may alter my perspective. Because earlier on, I talked about, further cementing that neural pathway, right? So in the liberation phase, we're actually going to put in steps to help you be more present in how you speak and how you think, because neural pathways are very, very changeable. Like you can absolutely change. It's not easy. It's just like anything else you do for the first time, whether it's going to the gym or you're trying to lose weight or eat healthy. Lord knows, trying to eat healthy. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of people can struggle with that, right? But
Hmm.
it's just like anything you do for the first time, you struggle. And a lot of people give up because I sucked on the first day or second day or even the seventh day. Okay, well, I've been going to the gym for, decades, and there are still times like, man, I messed up that bench or squat or deadlift or whatever,
Hmm.
right? But, once we walk through that process, but the neural pathways, the best way to explain this is two paths, right? You've got one pathway that is nice, groomed. It almost looks like the golden brick road from the Wizard of Oz. Well, that's the path that you typically travel down. And if you're anybody that really has really believed in themselves in a negative connotation, that's the negative road, right? You're always going to go down that. It's easy. It's your first knee-jerk reaction, right? So now we're going to try to flip the switch on that, where we're going to actually go down the other path that, right as of right now, it's overgrown with brush and all this other kind of vegetation. Well, we need to cut that down so that we can go down that path now and let this overgrow more, right? So that's the best way to explain how neural pathways work in our brains. It's just creating new roadways and really, with laser focus, staying intentional focus with that to make sure we're thinking more positively and saying the correct things and in the correct manner and so forth. And then after we're working on after we're working on the disciplines or the liberation aspect of it, we move into purpose. And this is probably where it's more deep rooted, because at the end of the day, man, you've got to find out what you're made for. Everybody is made for something and made for more, right? Not everybody is going to be a Kobe Bryant. Not everybody is going to be Beyonce. I don't think you want to picture me as Beyonce. Sorry. But nonetheless, everybody has got a purpose on this blue marble. Everybody does. I don't care who you are. Everybody's got this purpose. So we've got to figure out what that is. We got to figure out what are now Alex's natural God-given gifts. What is Carl's natural God-given gifts? Then we've got to figure out what are the core values of Alex or Carl or anybody that we work with, right? What are those core values so that we are now in operating of those core visions, right? Or in those core values. And then once we've dialed that in and really are starting to attack that, then we're going to after habits. Like we want to figure out and install disciplines that are going to reinforce everything that we've been working on in the awareness and the liberation in the purpose phase to continue to to go down the path that we need to go down to reinstall some new belief systems. And then once we're done with the habits phase, we're moving into action. It really just comes down to execution. Putting in some accountability systems, putting in some worksheets where we're putting some intentional focus into installing new beliefs and really, continue to chase it down. So in essence, in a high level overview, that's what the alpha method is, and that's what's really
Yeah,
worked well for me out of necessity and helped everybody that I've been surrounded by.
absolutely. And I love how you have that framework very clear. It's very, here's the steps we're going to follow to get you from where you're at to where you're wanting to go. Now, obviously, well, you talked a little bit about how you had this pull towards doing this being your purpose. What was kind of the story behind that, or what did you kind of have to overcome to go from your very successfully business and everything else to now where you're at?
That's a great question, man. And that's one that's probably going to get a little emotional, only because it gets deep. And this is the same story I share with everybody, right? And it really starts to where, I was 5 years old, my parents get divorced, and, I essentially come from broken home. And I had no stability in the sense of, I think I changed schools more time than I changed underwear, right?
Mm.
And I had no stability. I've been all over the place in schools as well as states and so forth. And the other aspect, as I grew up and I spent more mother time with my mother, she was very neglectful and very verbally abusive. And I don't hold anything against her for that. She was fed that same stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's a generational curse there. It was passed down. And unfortunately, he was also abused, physically
Mm.
abused. He actually learned that he was adopted and so forth. But um, there was a lot of negative programming that was fed into my mind. I was told numerous times that I would never be successful. Jacobi would never be successful. So for the longest time, man, I've had this thought process like Gandalf had to come by with this wand to tap you on the shoulder for you to be successful. That means literally, not literally, but for the most part, I thought that's what it was. Like you only successful people that who are destined for success. Those are the people that were going to be successful, not Karl, not the Jacobi family, right? And unfortunately for the duration of my early teens, even my late teens, I literally watched my mother die in every
Mm.
aspect, physically, emotionally, and of course, unfortunately, physically. And we never got to reconcile our differences. I mean, she was a hard person to live with, and unfortunately, when I moved away from her, we never got to reconcile our differences before she passed.
Sorry.
And there was a lot of baggage that was carried with that. And of course, going to the military, because I feel like I was going in a downward spiral. And even when I joined the military, while I definitely gained discipline, and I needed it, I wasn't going to be the person that, I was either going to be in jail or I was going to be dead. Growing up or at least in my later years, growing up in California, in that neck of the woods, yeah, you're either going to go in jail or you're going to be dead or a statistic, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
so, going through the military, being exposed, we were in numerous combat missions and served overseas numerous times, and then moving as a defense contractor. Also, had a failed marriage, and to a high school sweetheart, and somebody I met in high school thought that that was going to be my life partner, which obviously it wasn't. Um, and carrying into business. I've had several failed ventures, and even career. I knew deep down I wasn't made to be an employee somewhere. I knew deep down that I was meant for more, made for more. I just couldn't figure out what. Um, and so I ended up starting multiple ventures, and then we moved to e-commerce. And formed several companies and created several companies using the Amazon platform and began to scale them. And towards probably the last 3 or 4 years before I exited, man, we've had some major adversities. In a sense of, we had a partner that misappropriated funds to in excess of $400,000 that not only financially crippled our companies, but from a relational perspective, it also crippled as well. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, things just kind of went downhill from there. So throughout this whole time, man, there was just a lot of, I mean, yeah, it seemed like I was getting faced with every adversity possible to challenge my resilience, to challenge how bad I wanted to keep moving forward, or just, succumb to to the fact that success was not in my name. Success wasn't meant for Karl. And I failed to believe that, quite honestly. I deep down I knew I was meant for more. Deep down I knew I was made for more. I just didn't know what that would look like, you know. And that was covered or that was masked by my success in e-commerce. I got the privilege of speaking with numerous stages about my success in the platforms and coached a lot of entrepreneurs, hundreds of entrepreneurs, to do the exact same thing, create content and so forth. But like I said, man, deep down, I just knew that while that would help me as an entrepreneur, deep down, I knew I was made for more. And so towards the end of my venture, that's when I realized like, I love coaching. I love coaching. I love making an impact. And I found myself more talking about how to overcome adversities, how to overcome limiting beliefs. Like I found myself questioning, like, hey, wait a minute, you just told me X, Y, and Z. Like when I told you, hey, let's get you up to $100,000 a month in your business, you're like, oh, I don't feel like I could do that. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Where did that come from? Like who said that? And I know it came out of your mouth, but who said that? And it was actually not even the scope of our coaching agreement, but after I went into a 30-minute jam session of really going into the trenches, playing the 5-year-old asking the five whys, why, getting the root cause of why that came out of her mouth. She's like, oh, that's where it came from. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, there was a lot of tears, that were uncovered in that because you have to go deep. And oftentimes it uncovers wounds that we're sometimes not prepared to uncover. But if you
Mhm.
expect to have any lasting success and any lasting fulfillment and to be free, you gotta be able to go through uncover those wounds and move on to those from those wounds.
Yeah. And that's awesome that you really noticed yourself really diving into those in your coaching programs and were like, hey, you know what? Let's expand this and make it your entire life's work. I love that. So, what would you say has been some of the biggest challenges for you as you've made this transition and as you've been working with this coaching program?
Yeah, the biggest challenge for me is from as a business is I'm starting all over again, right? In essence, I spent over 15, almost 20 years in e-commerce industry, building businesses, building my reputation. Like I can walk just about to any conference and several people could walk up to me and know exactly who I am. Depending on the influencer, could be a whole lot more. But generally speaking, if I go to e-conference or anywhere that's e-commerce oriented, I'm going to be shaking hands with at least 10 to 15 people, if not more, because of they know my name, right? So I climbed up the ladder. I've done speaking engagements. I've done all these different things in the e-commerce space, right? But now that I'm starting in a new chapter, I'm starting all over again in the sense of climbing the ladder essentially, right? So for me as a business, that's hard because it feels like, man, I'm having to start all over again. But with my passion and my sense of fulfillment and my purpose being so deep rooted that it's not stopping me, right? I mean, I feel that I'm unstoppable because of this purpose, because of the fact that I want to impact as many men as I possibly can, and I don't care if I'm laying on bet that I'm still going to impact men. I'm still going to impact
Mhm.
as many men and as many people as I possibly can. So for me as a business, that's been my struggle is I'm starting all over again, essentially. Um, I'm not starting like from the ground, right?
Right.
I've got, years of experience as an entrepreneur or decades of experience as an entrepreneur, but in a sense of like name recognition, yeah, I'm pretty much
Yeah.
starting over.
And that can be really hard when you're starting over like that. And I know something that I've thought a lot about is creating, either passive income or supplemental income so that if ever I do have those transitions, I have something to help either,
Yes.
support me or help me during that transition.
Yes.
What have been your thoughts on this? What have you done to help create that more passive income?
Yeah, absolutely. So throughout my entrepreneur experience, especially in e-commerce, you're essentially creating income and using the internet, right?
Hmm.
And so, I've had the privilege of creating multiple streams of income, and some of which are passive types of incomes. I mean, I'm very pro, you know, passive incomes for sure. I mean, it's still to this very day, I still have brands and clients that come to me and say, hey, I need this type of service I need this type of service. And I'm like, I'm not in that world anymore. That's not something I do, but I will pass you off to a good friend of mine. And as long as that person's a client, I'm going to get a check every single month,
Hmm.
right? And I didn't have to do anything for it. So just the simple fact that I've kept that relationship intact, and at the end of the day, it's about relationships too in business as well. Something I've learned, which really helps reinforce the passive income experience because the more relationships you have, you may not necessarily, somebody comes to you for a service that you may not quite offer. Well, Johnny down the road may have a kick butt service for financial planning or to launch brands on e-commerce or on lawn mowing service, right? So it's like playing that connector role where I know I don't do that service, but I know somebody who can serve you. And yeah, that creates an amazing opportunity for passive income as an example.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. Your network determines your net worth. That's a phrase I always love.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, agree. I wholeheartedly agree.
absolutely. So, Carl, as we're wrapping up our interview, what exciting plans or initiatives do you have coming down the pipeline in the next 6 to 12 months for your business?
Yes. So we are planning two events. So one is an in-person Elevate. It's called Elevate Success Conference. That'll be held here in Sarasota. That'll be in July. The exact date is not yet determined, but we're working on the venue. So we're going to be launching that in July. It's going to be in person. We're excited about that. It's going to be a 2-day event where I'm going to bring in other powerhouse speakers. In addition to myself, yes, you're going to see my beautiful face on stage, but the rest of me at least, right? Right now you're probably seeing my shoulders up. You get to see the rest of me, but then we're going to have an online summit, a 3-day online summit in April, April 15th. So I'm pretty excited about that. News will be coming out about that. To learn more about it, just go to successwithcarl.com. Subscribe to our updates, and you'll get updates on when we're going to have the online summit as well as the in-person Elevate experience. So pretty excited for those different opportunities for sure.
Absolutely. And if anyone wants to connect with you, is that also the best place to go to get a hold of you?
Yeah, either that's the best place to get a hold of me. The next best place would be on LinkedIn or even on Facebook.
Perfect. All right, Carl. Well, thank you so much for your time and your tips. I loved hearing your model and how you're approaching this, really helping men improve their lives. And yeah, we
Appreciate you
appreciate
having me.
having you on the show. All
Yeah, appreciate you having me. It was an honor to be here. Appreciate it.
right, and we'll catch everybody on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning into Success in Motion. Want to share your story? Visit successinmotionpodcast.com/guest to apply and be featured on the show.